Ange and I had an experience. I want to share it with you. It was many years ago. We were teachers at Temple Christian School in Connersville, and we had students that were in a drama. They were in this play for their church and wanted us to attend. Of course, we love our students, wanted to attend, wanted to be there, wanted to support them. This was a production put on by their church in that area, kind of a larger church. And they had several nights because this was a big deal for them. They've been rehearsing and preparing for this, and there's several of our kids were in it. And so we were excited. We're going to go watch them do this thing they've been talking about and so excited about, and it had already gone on a few nights, and so we were coming maybe it was the third night, fourth night of this. We're sitting there in the audience and just ready for this play. It was put on entirely by junior high school kids. They wrote it, and they did the set. They did everything. The set looked pretty good. It looked like you were looking inside an airplane, like down the fuselage, if I'm saying that word right. You're looking straight on in the airplane. And all these seats, all empty at first until the play began. As soon as the play began, some of the teens dressed up as stewardesses. That's probably not correct. Flight attendants, that's the correct term now. Flight attendants are helping them on board the plane, and there's all the people that come on board. Of course, they're all teens, but they're dressed up as adults and all this, in different outfits. They're stereotypical type. So you've got your rancher from down in Texas with the drawl, and you've got the big hat, and you got the rich, snobby lady who wants nothing to do with anyone, and I'm kind of wondering why she's not in first class, but evidently she got bumped back, and there's the family that has all the rambunctious kids, Of course, the kids are played by teens, but they're acting like some of those were kids I had in class, and they fit really well in that role. And so, the newly married couple, they're just all goo-goo gaga-eyed at each other. They love each other. Goo-goo gaga, that's what you say to babies, isn't it? Okay, so they were all googly-eyed at each other. There we go. And so, everybody's playing their role. And of course, there were the obvious Christians on board, and there were the obvious atheists on board. So these little conversations broke out as the drama got going. They turned on this sound effect like the airplane's taking off, and so you're in the air now, and the flight attendants serving drinks or whatever while the conversations are going. Of course, all the conversations don't happen at the same time. They happen at different times so you can hear what everybody's talking about in the different sections of the plane. They all have to do with the same thing, though. They're having these conversations about who is God. And do you believe in God? Are you ready to see God? Those types of questions. And of course, you had the people that were just not about Christianity at all and were suspicious of Christians making these comments about, Christians are always, and they're hypocrites. And then you had, you knew who the Christians were because they were trying to share Jesus and trying to tell them what was true and what was right and what was good. And then you had people on board that just didn't have really an opinion, right? They just seemed like good people, but they just didn't. I don't know. I don't know about Jesus. I don't know about God. So this play goes on, and our kids do a great job on there in that play. And as we're watching it, though, it takes a twist. It takes a turn. Of course, there's got to be something going on here. Why did they set this whole thing up? So, they didn't share with us in class what their drama was about. They just said, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. It's powerful. It's powerful. And so the captain comes on, hear him over the intercom. Hey, we're experiencing some turbulence. Please make sure that you are seated and your seatbelts are buckled. And then, of course, the lights flicker and there is some turbulence. And everybody's, oh, whoa, that's scary, And then more conversations happen. And then eventually the captain comes back on and says, ladies and gentlemen, we have just lost an engine and we're going to ask you to assume crash position. And they all get in crash position. You hear the sound of the plane going down. And then, boom, and the curtains close. Of course, the curtains, I think, were made out of bed sheets, but the curtains closed. I think you can still see prints on them. But anyway, it was good. It was fine. And then there's this long pause as we're just kind of like waiting. What's happening? What are they doing back there? Evidently, they were getting all the makeup on of the blood and the bruises, and they wanted to look really cool back, when the curtains opened up. So they're all getting their ketchup on them, right? So the curtain opens back up, and it's not too gruesome, but they're all laying everywhere, bodies over seats, and they're just laying everywhere. Nobody's moving. I mean, you're just like, they're dead, right? And then all of a sudden, all of them start to sit up. I mean, it's not like one sits up and like, man, I survived the crash. No, they all sit up and they look at each other and say, are we dead? And then this character walks on the plane And you know immediately who it is because he walks onto the plane wearing a white robe and has a beard. You know who that is, right? That's Jesus. Everybody knows that. Universal sign for Jesus. So Jesus walks on board the plane, and he starts calling out names of people that were on this plane. There were like 30 different students playing different roles on this plane. He starts calling out names. Mary Smith, and Mary gets up from her seat, walks to Jesus, gives him a great big hug, and walks off the plane. Jack Simpson, he gets up, gives a hug, walks off the plane. You know, just different names are called. And then Jesus is done, and he's about to turn away. Only like 8, 9 people had walked off the plane at that point. And somebody calls out, wait a second, Jesus, what about me? Another one's, yeah, what about us? We lived a good life, Jesus. You got to take us too. And Jesus finally just says, I never knew you. And he turns around and he walks off the plane. And the curtains close as they're calling out to, God, this isn't fair. And other people are just sitting there stunned, and the curtains close. I think, wow, that's pretty powerful. I look at Anne, she looks at me, yeah, that was, wow, I'm kind of eerie powerful, you know, type of thing. And then something happened. See, we thought the play was done. I mean, that's it, right? That's all you need, right? Wow, that made a statement right there. That got my attention. But it wasn't done. Because when the lights went completely out, red lights came up behind the curtains. You kind of see silhouettes back there, and they start to, the red lights come on at the same time, this sound of blazing fire comes on. And then you hear all of these blood-curdling screams of people crying out in agony, and you can kind of see a little bit of silhouettes of them just in agony back there. And this cacophony of noise, it was so uncomfortable, went on for like 5 minutes. And then it went out, and the sound went out, the lights went out, and a spotlight came on the pastor who stood up and talked some kind of message like, well, you better be ready. You better be ready to see Jesus. And a few teenagers from the audience went forward and you know, with tears, and so I guess it was effective. Afterwards, you know, we stuck around because we wanted to talk to our kids from our class and congratulate them and, you know, all that and support them. And it was really weird seeing them up close with all that ketchup-y makeup stuff on them. But, you know, we're talking to them and, you know, you did a great job. And that was all true. They did do a great job. It was very, very convincing, their roles. And, you know, when they ask questions like, so what'd you think of the play? What do you say in that situation? Well, it's powerful. Man, that was powerful, you know, it's intense. That was intense. Oh, yeah, wow, that was wow. You know, what do you say? Because Angie and I, we just, something about it, we just were not, we weren't comfortable with it. So we're in this series where we're going through the book of Mark, we're looking at Jesus' life, and we're asking the question, okay, what kind of servant is he? Because we want to be like that. We want to be servants who serve with the kind of heart that he has. So we've seen a lot of really cool things about how he serves and why he serves. And what we want so badly is not to be people who just believe certain things, but we want to, as our theme for the year is move. We want to be those who are making a difference in the world. So we're really looking close at his life as Mark reveals it. And we come to a place now in our reading that I don't know if this is the right term or not. You know how in your Bibles there are often these little subject headings? For this section, they put a little heading. Now, none of that was written in the original Greek when they wrote the Bible, but, you know, along the way, somebody said, you know, this section ought to be called whatever. Maybe this section that we're about to read should be called Burning the Plane in Hell. It's the Burning the Plane in Hell section. Let me set the scene. So, Jesus has been teaching some incredible truths. I mean, he has really amazed people by the wisdom he has shared. He has shared some insights into man and women's own hearts, and it's really connected with them. And they said, man, there's something about the way he teaches. He teaches with authority. Nobody teaches like this. And Jesus has done some incredible miracles of compassion to people. So much so that others bring others that are in need to Jesus because he has all this compassion. And Jesus, not only all that, but he is really concerned about individual lives, even broken lives, especially, it seems, broken lives. He finds somebody who's messing up or has messed up or has been outcast or is considered a sinner, somebody who's just not worth anything. Jesus sits down, looks at them eye to eye, and connects with them and hears their story and invests in them. That's Jesus. And we've been talking about this group of people who've been following Jesus around, trying to trap him in his teachings, following Jesus around, trying to figure out what it is about what Jesus is doing that they could accuse Jesus of maybe blasphemy, maybe messing up somehow, because they don't like him. We call these individuals, the religious teachers, Pharisees. And the Pharisees are a contrast to Jesus. Everything that Jesus stands for, they don't seem to stand for it. And so every time that we've looked at this just about, the Pharisees have come up because they follow him around. They're looking to accuse him. This day that we're going to look at today is no different than any other day except for this. This day is a special day to the Jews. This day is the Sabbath. So as we begin our text, it says one Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is a holy day to the Jews in the sense that it is a set-apart day. It is a day that no work is to be done. So on the Sabbath, you're supposed to rest. That's the idea. It's very simple. It's one of the 10 Commandments. It's this is a day that is supposed to be holy unto the Lord, the Sabbath. So very important that we look at the Sabbath. And what's interesting is the rest of my text doesn't show up here. So, one Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields. And this is common for a Jewish rabbi to walk through the grain fields and share truth about God, but teach it from nature. His classroom, God bless you, is nature. And so, you remember, Jesus was teaching on the subject of, hey, don't worry about your life. He looks to flowers. Consider the lilies of the field. See how beautiful they are? They don't worry. God takes care of them. So he's a teacher in nature. That's what a rabbi does. And so one Sabbath, Jesus is going through the grain fields, and I imagine that the grain is high, it's gold, and this is my imagination. And probably as Jesus is walking through, maybe even he's brushing up against them as they go through, almost like the sea, parting the sea, spreading the sea, and the disciples are following behind. His disciples walked along. They began to pick some heads of grain. Now this seems natural, doesn't it? I mean, they've been walking with Jesus, listening to him teach. How many miles they walk, I don't know. But if their bellies are hungry and grain is hitting them as they walk, it'd be natural for them to pluck some grain, maybe rub that in their hands to break apart the edible parts of the wheat and to eat that. And so that's what they're doing. It doesn't seem like a big deal. They're wrapped up in what Jesus is saying. They're just eating some heads of grain. And yet, as they do this, the religious leaders are watching and they say, aha, I think we've got Jesus on this one. And so as they're walking along and eating heads of grain, his disciples walked and they began to pick some heads of grain. Now it wants to show up. Okay. Here's what they said. The Pharisees said to him, look, that means Jesus, stop. Jesus is out front. He's leading them. Look at them. Turn around and look at what they're doing. And as Jesus stops and turns around, I'm sure he saw maybe Peter plucking the grain, Matthew rubbing it in his hands, maybe Thomas, he was sticking in his mouth, maybe had a big wad in his mouth at that time. Jesus looks at them. They look at Jesus. What? I mean, it's kind of like just having popcorn with the show, isn't it? I mean, it's not a big deal. What? The Pharisees say, look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath? What? Eating grain? This is what? This is unlawful. See, the Pharisees believe that they are the ones that are supposed to keep everybody in line religiously, to please God. They're presenting a God who is very, very harsh, very, very demanding. He has this law, you shall not work on the Sabbath. You're picking grain. You're picking grain. Don't you understand? Now, see, the Pharisees, all they have to go on really is this law that says rest. It's a simple law. Honor the Sabbath, keep it holy, rest. And yet, over the years, the religious authority have had to put other laws in place. They wrote them and codified them in a book called the Mishnah. Other laws that were put in place to protect God's law, like God's law needs protecting. The idea was, what if we accidentally break His law? He says, don't work. What if we accidentally work? What if we do something that we're thinking, this isn't work, and it turns out to be work, and there we go, we've just broken the law. Let's put other laws in place. In fact, they had 11 specific laws for bread making. The whole process of bread making, from you can't reap, you can't thresh it, you can't divide it, you can't bake it, you can't stone ground it, and all the things. I'm not a bread maker. I don't know what goes into it. You can't do it. They're accusing Jesus' disciples of reaping the harvest because they plucked a few grains of wheat. And they're saying, look at the evidence. Thomas still has it in his mouth, for goodness sake, Jesus. Jesus could have said, you know what? You guys are right. They're working. They pluck some grain. It's work. You're right. But listen, fellas, if that's work, then so is what you're doing. Following us around, taking notes, finding ways to accuse us. Investigative snooping has got to be work too, and we could score one for Team Jesus. But Jesus doesn't do that. You know why Jesus doesn't do that? Because He doesn't believe it's work. It's the same event. I mean, the disciples picked, they rubbed, they ate. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you call it. That's what they did. So the Pharisee says, you're working. Jesus says, I don't think it's work. It's not work. So what's going on? How could you have two different views of the exact same thing? Jesus then takes these men to a familiar place because He wants to show them that you can actually see the same event differently. It's very possible for two people to look at the same event and walk away with a different impression. And what He's asking them to do is to just look at this scene differently. And so He takes them back to a familiar place, a place they would have taught about in their synagogue lessons. It's an account of one of their heroes of the faith, David. So He says, well, I want you to go in your minds back with me to David. But I love the way he presents going back. He answers, have you never read? What an insult to religious leaders. Have you never read? Of course we've read. We know our scriptures. Have you really, though? Because if you had read, you would have remembered that what David did and what his friends did. Have you never read what David did when he and his companions, just parallel that to Jesus. He says, look, when me and my companions, we're talking about my followers. Now let's talk about David's followers. Do you remember what David's followers did? Because I think you're going to find that there's a lot of similarities here between these two accounts. Have you never read this? Well, yes, we've read this. So you remember, right? Yeah. What David and his companions did when they were hungry and in need. My disciples are hungry and in need. They were hungry and in need. So let's just compare these two stories. Do you remember what they did? Yes, we remember what they did. Now, just get on with it. So he even insults them more by saying, in the days of Abiathar, the high priest, we know the story. We know when it was. You don't have to give us reference. He's really digging it in, isn't he? He entered, this is David, the house of God, that's the temple of God, and ate the consecrated bread. There was actually showbread that was on tables. That showbread was made out of grain that had been at some point reaped and thrashed and divided and ground and baked and placed out on the show table as something to honor and worship God. I love the symbolism God has all the time. Why is there showbread in the temple? Because He's the bread of life. I mean, he's giving us all these clues as to who He is in how He displays His holy temple. And yet, this bread was the offerings given by the people after they reaped. It was the first fruits. It's the first 10%. It's the tithe. It's what we're supposed to give God, our best, and a portion of what we receive. It was given in grain. It was given in things. It was all brought, fruits and vegetables. The harvest was brought in to God's place. And what's interesting is this consecrated bread that was out on display, that must have smelled wonderful, It didn't stay out long enough to get stale. In fact, it only stayed out long enough to be honoring and worshipful to God, but then it was consumed. It was actually consumed, which is lawful only for the priest to eat. It was actually consumed by the priests themselves. You see, the priests lived off of the offerings of others. Even the burnt offerings, not the fatted portions, which was the best part, that was given up to God and burnt to God as this incredible aroma, but the rest of it was given to the priest to eat. So they ate well, and they ate off of the offerings of the people. So he's saying, have you not read what David did and his companions? And when they were hungry, they went into the temple and they received from the priest the bread, which is only lawful for the priest to eat, and they ate it, it says. And he also gave some to his companions, so they all had their fill. You remember that story? Well, yes, we remember that story. So what are you going to do with it? Is David a lawbreaker? This is the hero of their faith. David, a lawbreaker? No, David's not a lawbreaker. Well, there was that Bathsheba account, but besides, in the census, but besides those two, he's a man after God's own heart. No, he's not a lawbreaker. Oh. So how do you interpret that story? Well, I mean, there's a perfectly logical explanation why he's not a lawbreaker, and that's as far as Jesus really needs them to go, because all he wants them to do is see the story differently and to see the scene differently. Isn't that interesting? You realize that Jesus actually never explains himself here? What is it that Jesus saw differently about the companions of David and his own disciples? What is it he saw differently in both of those stories that equate? I mean, we're talking about the same thing, right? Either you're talking about grain in the form of raw, plucked from the field, or you're talking about grain in the form of baked in bread. You're talking about law. Is this really work or not work? Is this really law-breaking by taking from the priest what only priests are supposed to eat from? All he's asking them to do is see it differently. Isn't that interesting? He never tells us. What is it you see different here, Jesus? It would be really helpful for us to know, what is it about these two accounts that you see differently? Why is this not law-breaking? I'll give you my take. And I'm only giving you my take because there are all kinds of takes out there. You could read commentaries and you'll get different opinions depending on who you read from. Some I like, some I think are really far out there because some even accuse Jesus of, Jesus is actually okay with law breaking because, he can do whatever he wants. Really? I thought when he went to the cross sinless for our sins so he could take on our sins. So some I'm comfortable with, some I'm not comfortable with. I'll just give you my take. Here's what I think is going on. When we're talking about David and his companions, I think we're talking about David seeking alms. David and his companions are in great need, and so they go to the temple and ask for bread. They're not violating the spirit of the law, which is that priests are to live off of the offerings of others. It truly is theirs, and it is theirs to give away if they want to give it away. The idea is that the priest stands in between God and man. It's the representative of God and man. The reason we don't have priests today is because Jesus is our high priest. He stands between God and man. He's the one we can pray to directly. We don't have to pray through another. He's our high priest, and he has offered himself as the ultimate sacrifice. So he's the priest and the sacrifice. But back then, they had actual men who stood in the gap between God and man, representing God himself. And so when David went to the temple, he's seeking from God assistance for his men because he was on the run at this point in his life, in danger of being taken down. He's hungry. His men are hungry. He goes to the place where he knows he'll find compassion, God himself. He receives from God's generosity. In fact, you could even say he receives from God's hand and eats from it. So what's going on as Jesus walks through the grain fields? I think there's alms-seeking again. They're hungry, and there's food. And the very law that the Pharisees are using to accuse Jesus' friends of breaking is the very law that allows them to do what they're doing. Because the law says that if you are hungry and in need, you may glean from the fields. That means you're not stealing. You are just taking a little bit to fill your bellies. You're not hoarding. You're not storing up. That would be wrong. But you are allowed to take alms from the field. In fact, God owns everything, and he generously gives from his own provision. And he has provided, even in the law that they want to use against Jesus, for Jesus, his friends, to eat. So we're looking at the same exact scene. They're taking heads of grain, and they're eating it. The Pharisees say, you are breaking the law. Jesus says they are receiving the generosity of God. All right, now that's just my opinion. There's other ways to try to interpret that, but I believe Jesus wants to just change the way we see things. Just see it different. If you can see it differently, then maybe you won't just jump to the conclusion that they are breaking the law and in need of severe punishment. Why is it so important? Why is it so important the way we see things? Why does Jesus make a big deal out of this? I think it's important the way we see things because we have been hearing over and over again from different groups, and maybe you've thought this, or maybe you've bought into this, or maybe you've read about this, or maybe this just disturbs you, but you've seen the story played out over and over again. It's the same story. It's God's story, right? God created the world. He created everything in it, and he gave us this law to live by, and when we break that law, he gets upset, and he comes after us, and he crashes our plane and burns it in hell. And if you don't think that's a story being told today, all you have to do is turn on the news from several years ago, go back and look several years ago, and you can see funerals of a gay man and protesters marching with signs that says, God hates facts. It's out there, isn't it? And you've seen it and you've heard it in more subtle forms. You see, this story of God who is ruler, who is judge, who is the convictor, who does have wrath, there's elements of this. This is all true. The problem is we're not seeing it the way that Jesus would want us to see it. And what he's asking them to just see it a different way. Could you possibly see this through different eyes? Who God is and what he's about and what he's after and what he wants and what he has for us and his desire for us to get and to grasp and to hold on to. You see, you can look at the same events throughout the Bible and you can go one direction or the other and you can say, well, see, there's the wrath of God, he hates sinners. See, there's the wrath of God, he hates sinners. Or you could go and you could read those accounts and you could say, while God is judge, God is also provider, and he wants so badly for us to get that he wants to save us from our own choices. And he's gone to great lengths to do that, hasn't he? If we go back to the time where Angie and I are sitting there watching this drama unfold, the reason it was so disturbing is because we were expecting a different ending. And all we were doing was seeing it differently. It didn't play out that way, but we were seeing it differently. And maybe if we could just go back in time and redo it, we could tell that story differently. The good news is we get a chance to tell it differently today. Can you just see it? All the people come on board. They could be the exact same characters, the southern rancher and the rich lady and the couple in love. And everybody gets on board, and there are all these conversations. They're all about God, and do you believe? And you could have the guy just teasing Christians, and they're so hypocritical and going through the motions, right? Everything about that play would have worked really well. Even the fact that the captain comes on, we're experiencing some turbulence, buckle up, and then the turbulence happens, and we've lost an engine, and we're going down. All of that could happen the same way. And then we crash, and there's this big explosion, only there's survivors on board. And the plane catches on fire, but there's survivors on board, and they're scrambling to get out, and people are running, and they're screaming, trying to get out of the plane. And one of the Christians is able to free himself, and he's about to get out the emergency exit, but he hears somebody behind him crying out, and he turns, and he goes, and he lifts a chair, and he finds behind that chair that there's a man who's trapped. But it's not just any man, it's the man who was teasing him. He was saying, Christians are all hypocritical, but he doesn't care. He frees him. He struggles to get him free, and the guy comes free, but he's got a broken leg, and he helps him off and out the window. And as he gets him out the window, before he's able to go out the window, the plane explodes and the curtains come down. Or the bed sheets. They come down. Wow. It's a different story. And then they open up one more time. And there's that man being helped by some EMTs with his broken leg, and a news reporter catches him. And caught on camera is this man completely broken, saying, I I don't know what just happened. I don't understand Christians. 2 hours ago I hated them. But somebody I didn't even know saved my life and died trying. I don't know this Jesus, but I sure like his followers. That could be the story. That could be how it ended. It's the same truth we're looking at, isn't it? It's the same exact truth. Elements of everything we've talked about, it's true. You realize the Pharisees, according to their interpretation of the law, they're right. It's work. Jesus just sees it differently. Because he sees the other laws that are in place that offer the generosity of God. And if we have to choose between laws that all we can see is how God wants to use them to burn us in hell, then we need to see it differently. We just need to see it differently. Is it possible that God gives us his law to protect us and to help us? Is it possible that the law itself is not God's excuse to punish us, but to free us? That if we actually got it and lived by them, we would see that this is actually the way God intended us to live, and we will thrive when we live within his principles. Could we see this as kindness instead of punishment? You realize what Jesus says next answers that question? Jesus wants so badly for us to see that the law of God, the truth of God, is good and is right. Isn't just good because it's right, but it's good because it's good for us. God is writing laws for us, not against us. He's revealing truth for us. Here's what Jesus says. The Sabbath was made for man. Oh, hey, wait. The religious leaders say, are you kidding me, Jesus? The Sabbath is our gift. We have been working like dogs to try to live up to this law, and you're telling me that it's a gift? It's a burden. And that's why we burden people, because we want to make sure nobody breaks it. Jesus, no, you got it all wrong. It's a gift for you. God's intent in his law is to give you rest. Because if you didn't have rest, you would work yourselves to the bone, and you would never have rest to enjoy family or to worship God. You need to break. You need to slow down. And you need to have time to focus on the things that really matter and worship. It's a gift. He says, if it's not that man was made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath didn't exist before God conceived the idea of creating man. The Sabbath was given to man as a gift. It wasn't something that I'm going to make man have to conform to this Sabbath because the most important thing is that the Sabbath isn't broken. God would say that's crazy. Why in the world would he have a law just to have a law? What's the purpose of that? Is God some kind of maniacal tyrant that he demands from us things just to see us fail? Does he have a reason? If we just see it different, we could see the reason behind it. And of course, the Pharisees are probably thinking what a lot of people think in this age of relativism. Well, who made you? Who made you the one to decide how we interpret a scene? Don't we all have a right to interpret it any way we want? You know what the answer is? Because the answer to relativism is there is no relativism. There's absolute truth. Only we just don't like that. It's uncomfortable. Here's what Jesus says. You remember, Jesus is the one who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's a pretty absolute statement. He goes on and says, I'm the only way to the Father. That's pretty exclusive. He goes on, the next verse, he says, so the Son of Man, that's his favorite title for himself, is Lord even of the Sabbath. He's saying, hey, if you want to interpret the law, interpret it through my eyes, because I will tell you God's intent. Now, you can interpret it any way you want, and you can live miserable lives trying to live up to your version of the law. But if you want to know why God wrote this, why God gave this, why this law is in place, then you see it through my eyes, because I will show you the kind of heart of the servant that God is. He is serving you. It's amazing to think about. God isn't out to get you. He is serving you. It's the reason He sent His Son down to this world that is full of broken people, of broken choices. He sent Him down here to serve us because we were in great, desperate need. We didn't need somebody to show up and condemn us. We're condemning ourselves. We already know what our struggle is, what our pain is, what our desires are, what our false intentions are. We already know what it is that we war with within ourselves. We don't need to be condemned anymore. We need somebody that will come down here to help us. And Jesus comes down here not to burn us on a plane in hell, but comes, if you will accept it, to burn on the cross for our sins. He has rushed in and saved us and got burnt alive doing it. That's what He wants us to see. Bottom line, the Pharisees looked for people to mess up. Excuse me, I'm missing a word there. The Pharisees looked for people to mess up. The reason is because they saw God as judge. Now, there's truth in the fact that God is judge, but that's all they saw Him as, and so that's what they were doing. They were looking for people to mess up. Jesus came along. Jesus looked for messed up people to fix up. There's the difference, right? Jesus looked for messed up people. And if we look at a passage of Scripture, and there's more than one way to look at it, why not go with the provider God rather than the judging God? Because both are true. I get that. Sin must be judged, but Jesus took that on Himself, and He was already judged for us on the cross. And if we will accept that, it sets us free. Because the heart of God is, He wants us to look for messed up people to bring to Jesus to fix up. That's what He longs for. That's what He desires for. That's what He wants out of you and me. If you've only seen God as one who is looking to punish you, that's the only reference point you have. That's all you've been ever taught. That God is so demanding. He's so restrictive in what I can do. He wants to take away all my fun and joy in life, and then when I mess up, I stand condemned before Him. If that's it, if that's all you've ever seen, will you consider looking at it differently? If God can look at your life and my life as messed up as we are, and He sees something different, something worth saving, could you return the benefit of the doubt and see God differently? Everything we've talked about today is true. There's just aspects of the truth of God that we really, really need to emphasize in our own life and in how we live as servants of others. Let's be the provider and show off the love of our providing God. I'm going to ask in just a moment that you stand. We're going to pray together. What I want to pray for is that we will, as a church, continue to be champions of grace. The very mercy of God, the very grace of God. Without justifying anything, without shading over anything, without downplaying any of the truth of God, but really emphasizing the grace of God. We already are that church. I just want us to continue to embrace it and to hold it up high. I want to pray if you've been beat up all your life by religion, just this idea that there's a conformity that you must live by, and it's restrictive, and it's looking for ways to hurt you. You've lived under a Pharisee type of understanding or view of God. I'm going to ask that you, in this prayer, just give that up to God. Just say, God, that's the only way I've ever known you. That's the only way I've ever seen you. That's the only way I understand you. Will you show me your grace? Will you show me your mercy? Will you show me how much you are here for me and not against me? I want to pray for you. Let's stand. Father God, we love you. We love you because you have a heart so big. You are called love. We don't always understand what that means, that you're a God of love. But it's in moments like this where we start to see things differently. that we can start to see that while you are a holy God, you're an incredibly graceful God. And you want for us so much. And you desire for our lives to be fixed, to be restored, to be returned to the glory we were supposed to have before we made wrong choices. God, help us if we struggle with seeing you this way, to see you with new eyes, and to take our cues from Jesus Christ, who shares your heart every time he speaks. Help us to follow after this amazing servant leader of ours. And help us too to be gracious and to share that kind of love and provision for others. We ask for it in Jesus' name. Amen. If you don't know Jesus in a personal way, I hope I introduced to you how much he loves you. And that what he did on the cross for you was to give up everything. He suffered and died for every sinful choice, every sinful thought, every sinful action you've done. He did that because he absolutely loved you. He's here for you. And he wants you to surrender your life today. He says today is the day of salvation. So I invite you to come. While everyone sings, this is your invitation to come.